Hello fellow lovers of good opera singing, welcome to another video on my channel. Unfortunately, the video on cancel culture in Amsterdam got cancelled. The Dutch National Opera, or Berikowski, who knows, did not like it and had YouTube remove it. I guess they didn't enjoy the fact that most of Koski's ideas were recycled, and that it was a production created and ruled by complete ignorance. Don't they know that it is particularly unfortunate to silence critics by means of censorship? Well, personally I am happy that the video annoyed them so much that they invested time and money in order to have it removed. On the other side, I'm very sorry about the discussion in the comment section. It was super interesting, and I thank you all for contributing. It was a real exchange, not some mainstream propaganda organized by the gatekeepers of political correctness and the many new dictators of cancel culture. Shame on them, and shame on you, Dutch National Opera. Today we are going to make a reality check. What does that mean? I recently heard a couple of rather famous singers in Tosca. Tosca again, please excuse the monotony, and I asked myself, how does the live performance compare to the singing presented on their respective albums? Before going into detail, let me say a few words on recordings and why one cannot judge a singer from an album alone, at least not in my opinion. Microphones tend to misrepresent reality. Every microphone has specific characteristics which can enhance positive or negative aspects of a voice. The channel Mr. Opera has made an excellent video on the subject matter. Find the link in the description below. It proves that the microphone always creates something that isn't really there. This also goes for some of the sacred cows of recordings, made during the 1930s, 40s, 50s and 60s. Already back in the 1930s, electronic recording technology enhanced certain frequencies, and the material, when recorded on celluloid, could be cut and edited. In his very entertaining book on the production of the Decca Ring, John Culshaw tells the story of Birgit Nilsson being pissed at the Decca team because her voice didn't sound loud enough in the recording of Götterdämmerung. Even though, as Culshaw wrote, Nilsson's voice on the recording had already been much louder than it was in reality. Even Nilsson's voice was engineered. She did not talk to Culshaw for weeks, until they played the recording on a state-of-the-art playback device at full blast. And thus, what Lauri Volpi wrote in Parallel Voices seems to be true. Quote, "The record lies. It is industrialized, commercialized fraud." Unquote. But what about live recordings? Most of today's live recordings and broadcasts cannot be trusted either, as they are subject to a sophisticated live chain of equalizers, compressors, and other technical gadgets that make singers usually sound better than they really are. The only recordings I trust are in-house recordings made from a certain distance, without the use of equalization and compression. Granted, even these recordings cannot represent the live experience, but they are more objective than any studio or broadcast recording can ever be. In the past 2 months, I have attended a few performances of Tosca. Among them, one with Vittorio Grigolo and Sondra Radvanovsky, and another one with John Tetelman and Saioa Hernandez. Both Grigolo and Tetelman are featured on best-selling albums. While Grigolo is well established, Tetelman is currently being hyped as the new Kaufmann by Deutsche Grammophon and as the new Corelli by enthusiastic YouTube fans. So I found it interesting to listen to both of them in real life. Both of the performances took place at the Deutsche Oper in Berlin. The cast was good throughout, the minor parts were all excellent, the orchestra played reasonably well on both occasions, the staging was an old traditional one from 1969, and it still works very well. Especially Act 3 is so beautiful that people kept taking pictures, even though it was forbidden to do so. Generally, I have to say that the Deutsche Oper is much better than its rival, the Staatsoper. So if you visit Berlin and want to see a quality performance, I'd advise you to buy tickets at the Deutsche Oper. The chances of catching a good performance are much higher. It has better acoustics and overall a much higher artistic level. The performance with Grigolo and Radvanovsky took place on January 13. Grigolo looked good and sang the part with ease. His voice certainly is large enough. He could be heard very well throughout. In fact, his was one of the most penetrating voices I have heard live. I have heard Giacomini, Domingo, Aragal, Pavarotti, Hedley, and many others. The only ones who projected better than Grigolo were Martin Mühle and Alfredo Kraus. That being said, I have to say that the color of his voice didn't suit the part of Cavaradossi at all. he should be singing Nemorino or Mozart. In a certain way, his case resembles the one of Klaus Florian Vogt. Vogt's voice is loud as well, but it doesn't suit the parts he sings. So my advice to the producers would be, go for quality and not for quantity. Furthermore, Grigolo's voice always was on the verge of a wobble. Then he often suddenly changed to pianissimo head voice singing in the middle of a phrase in order to underline musicality, deep feeling, or what have you. It's alright if you do it a couple of times, but he did it in every third phrase and turned the originally good effect into a nuisance. Grigolo did surprise me. I thought that he was a tenor with a small voice hyped up by the record industry. But no, this man has a well-projected, large voice. He sounds much better than on his recordings. Unfortunately, the repertoire wasn't right. Radvanovsky is being sold as the best dramatic soprano of our days. She has a very large voice, but that's where it ends. Her voice shows all the signs of too much mileage. She sounds like a 60-year-old that has sung a lot. That's okay, but not when you sing Tosca. The only Toscas who were 60 and could pull it off were Olivero and Albanese, an exclusive club in which Radvanovsky has no membership. Her high notes, however, were still intact, and her Vissi d'arte was thrilling. And when she and Grigolo sang their unisono in Act 3, the public even erupted into spontaneous applause on open stage. That's how hungry they are for well-sung acuti. The star of the performance, however, was conductor Valerio Galli. He stood in for Donald Ronicles, who had cancelled on short notice. Galli had no rehearsals and, nota bene, conducted the entire opera from memory, alla Mitropoulos. He did a fantastic job. He accompanied exceptionally well, never overpowered the singers, and even added a few individual modifications. A brilliant performance. This man knows his craft and has the passion we are all looking for. But alas, he does not have the same PR as his Amsterdam colleague Viotti. The performance with Tetelman took place on March 3. Tetelman sports the perfect physique du role. Young, tall, elegant, vain. But that's where the praise ends. His voice is nothing like the one on the albums or the videos found on YouTube. It is a medium-sized lyrical voice. When singing above the passaggio, however, he has an uncanny ability to push his voice and triple the volume. This is done with a lot of force, a wide open mouth, and a cramped posture. It is impressive, but comes across as unmusical showing off. And of course, it doesn't look good. It was hard labor. Grigolo, on the other hand, sang the part with nonchalance. I'm afraid that Tetelman, who is now 35, can sing that way only because of his good material. Let's not forget Viazon. He also had great material, but by forcing his voice with little technique, he ruined it in no time. I hope that Tetelman won't follow his footsteps. On YouTube, people compare him to Corelli. There is nothing Corelli-like about him, except maybe for his beautiful physique. And in real life, he sounds nothing near as impressive as on his newest album for Deutsche Grammophon. That company needs a new star tenor, as Kaufmann is with Sony and Kalea is with Decca. That's probably the reason why he's currently being hyped the way he is. His Tosca was Saioa Hernandez. Hers was the least known name, but her singing was the best. A homogeneous, well-rounded and balanced spinto voice throughout the registers. Great acting skills, great stage presence. Her Vissi d'arte was almost perfect. She also commands a stunning chest voice, which made her create Tosca's most dramatic moments in Act 2 in a very convincing way. The only thing that can be held against her is a slightly fluttery upper register. Apart from that, Miss Hernandez is a singer I'd pay good money for. She is one of the best Toscas I've ever heard live, and in my opinion, she deserves more credit. If I had to choose a cast made of the performances I saw, I'd probably choose Grigolo as Cavaradossi and Hernandez as Tosca. Radvanovsky is way past her prime, and Tetelman, well, he still has to find a way to make his voice sound homogeneous and musical, and he has to learn to find the right repertoire, one that he can sing with ease and not with force, a cramped posture and a wide open mouth. I am surprised by my own verdict, but again, recordings really don't represent real life. Listening to recordings is, as someone famous once said, as going to bed with a photo of Brigitte Bardot. Thanks for watching.